and we are back here on the Trading Post, and we are being joined by Brett and Shy, and they've got a special guest. Who do you guys have in studio today?
Man, we are lucky enough today to have Scott Hyde. He is the Chief Appraiser of the Van Zandt County Appraisal District.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and we're lucky to have him because he's got some interesting information. A lot of times in the home buying process, some people, especially new buyers, paying property taxes is a new thing to them. Sometimes people that sell property and paying off their taxes for their home have some questions. But he has a couple of interesting points today, especially regarding our little storm that came in last week that I was unaware of until our conversation last week, and I'm sure that most of our audience is unaware of as well.
Yeah, Brett, we have a new exemption that just came about in the last legislative session. It's titled a temporary exemption for qualified property damaged during a disaster. So with our recent winter weather, this is going to be something that some folks may want to take advantage of to help save some money on their property taxes this coming year.
Yeah, and exemptions, that's a big thing that everybody is interested in. What exemptions do I qualify for on my property taxes? What information can you tell us about how do they go about the process and find out if their home qualifies?
Okay. So the big thing in this is the governor did declare a state of disaster for the entire state. So that's the big caveat for this exemption to get over. So really pretty much anybody listening in Texas is going to be qualified on that regard. The second is that we do have to have damage, physical damage to your property caused by the disaster. And thirdly, it has to have affected their property to at least 15% damage. So that's the threshold to get in. So it's going to exclude folks that had some very minor damage, but if they had some significant damage that was 15% or greater of their property value, that is the threshold to begin qualifying for the exemption. One important to note is land does not qualify. So this is going to be your structures. For businesses, it will apply to their business personal property, but it does not apply to land. So if they did have significant damage, at least 15%. So for example, you've got a $100,000 structure. If you had over $15,000 in damage to that structure, it would qualify for this exemption. One other important thing to note is this is not automatic. This is going to have to be initiated by the property owner or their agent. It does require an application.
Where do they go about finding this application?
Sure. So the comptroller, the Texas State Comptroller's website has all of the state forms on that. The specific form for this is Form 50-312. I would say, Van Zandt County's website, we also have a link to that form on our website. It's right there on our homepage. There's a link to that. Your specific appraisal district and other counties may have that linked, but the Texas Comptroller does have that. It's 50-312 is the form, and it will be titled Temporary Exemption for Qualified Property Damaged by Disaster. So that will be where they find that.
Okay, so they have to go to the comptroller's website, and then do they send it back to the comptroller or to their specific county appraiser of the county that they live in?
Sure, good question. Yeah, they do send that back to the appraisal district where they live, where the property is located. So you want to make sure, and do not send it back to the comptroller, as they're not going to process those.
Okay, and so yeah, if like we're located in Henderson County here, so they would need to contact the Henderson County Appraisal District if they reside or have a business in this county.
Exactly.
Okay, and so, if they could possibly live in this county and have a business possibly in Van Zandt County, and would they need to send in two different forms to the two different counties for that?
Correct. It will be where the property is located. So wherever the property is located, you want to turn it into that county. And if you've got property in two different counties, you're going to need to turn it in two different forms if you are the unfortunate enough to have damage in both counties. So hopefully folks didn't have this kind of damage, but if they did, at least this will be an avenue to get a little bit of relief. One important thing to note, there's several tiers to the damage. It's not just automatic, you have 25% damage, you get 25% off. So the state has set this up. When this law was put into place by our legislature, they set it up for 4 levels of damage. So we had level 1, which is between 15 and 30% damage. That entitles you to an exemption of 15%. If we're between 30 and 60% damage, it entitles you to an exemption of 30% of your value. And then 60 to 100 is 60%. And then if you're 100% damage, it was a total loss, then you're going to get a total exemption. One last thing to note on that exemption, though, is it is going to be prorated. So the date of the disaster declaration was February 12th. So that this exemption would apply and be prorated from February 12th to the end of the year, and it would apply to the 2021 tax year. That's a lot. That's a lot right there at once, but those are important things to note.
Who would they go about getting to look at the property and determine the percent? Is that y'all's office would look at it, or a contractor, or a licensed inspector? Who do they get out there to determine if it's 15 or 30, 60, or 100%?
Sure. That is going to be a lot of times through their insurance company if they have that. Okay. If they're not going through an insurance company and they've got a contractor out there giving them estimates of repair, those are going to be some good resources for it. Typically, the application itself is going to have a lot of that information that they're going to submit to the appraisal district, and they're going to claim a certain percentage of damage. And then the appraisal district will be charged with determining how is that correct, approving or denying that level of exemption. So yeah, they actually can do that work themselves. It's not a requirement that they go through a contractor, but one thing that's going to be very important is for them to keep as much supporting documentation in the form of receipts, estimates, insurance claims. Pictures are great. You don't want to find yourself in the position where you went out there and fixed a lot of this work yourself, didn't have any documentation or receipts, and you're coming in after the fact making an application on that with no proof to back that up, because you'll want to submit some of that documentation with that application to make sure you've got a solid case and the appraisal district can quickly approve that.
That's a good point, because I know a lot of people were just rushing out to make temporary fixes and things like that, and may have already started getting in on the repairs. And so you're suggesting start now, take the pictures, and having a contractor or a professional appraiser looking at it could help with your documentation as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you said this doesn't apply to land. Does this only apply to residential, to my house, or also if I have a structure that's a commercial business or industrial, does this apply to that also?
It is going to apply to all property types. There are some caveats. One other thing that we haven't got into quite yet is if you do qualify for this exemption, you are entitled to this next year when your taxes are due to pay in an installment agreement as well. That's something that's been afforded to over 65 and disabled individuals on their homesteads for quite some time. But if a person did qualify for this disaster exemption, they would qualify for this on a temporary basis, 1 year of installment. Now, I'll bring that up because if it is a business that has gross receipts over $5 million a year, they would not be able to qualify for an installment agreement, but truthfully, most companies of that size wouldn't be worried about the installment agreement anyways.
And is that a separate form they would have to file for that installment period as well?
Correct. That would be with their collector. So that's typically, in Van Zandt, that happens to be the same place. Van Zandt County Appraisal District both collects and appraises. But in most counties like Kaufman and Henderson, that's going to be a separate office. You're going to want to talk with your county tax assessor collector to file for that installment agreement. But first, the first step to get over is you're going to want to have to qualify with the appraisal district for that that temporary exemption for disaster damage.
And is there a time limit on getting this form filed with the county?
There is. That's very important to note. It is actually going to be 105 days from the date after the governor declared that disaster. So he declared the disaster on February 12th. So that means the deadline for exemption is May 28th. And that's going to be statewide. That's not something that's just for Van Zandt County. That's going to be for all counties. So you're going to want to get it in before May the 28th of 2021. After that date, you're probably going to be out of luck.
Okay, so Memorial Day, mark that on your calendar. Make sure you get it in before the Memorial Day weekend.
Absolutely. And this is going to be hitting right in the time that most folks are going to be getting their notices of appraised value. They're going to be going through, if they need to file an appeal with the appraisal office. So don't let all that get mixed up together. Make sure you get this exemption filed, and also if you need to, file a protest with your appraisal office for your value that year as well. So you can kind of do both in that same period, but you want to get it in before May 28th. And in most cases, right around that same time, your deadline to file an appeal is May 15th, or 30 days from receiving that appraisal notice if you're wanting to file a value appeal or some other type of appeal. So those are kind of close, and you don't want to get them mixed up.
And so you're saying get it in as early as possible. You don't want to be there at the last minute and something happened that you cannot get your paperwork in.
Exactly.
And that may be something that a lot of us take for granted, that we know it, that you can appeal your taxes, the value each year. And, you know, y'all are very nice, very professional down there. You send out the tax notice, and then there's a deadline. You come in, you file the form, and you bring proof. What kind of proof would they need to go about that appeal process? What are y'all looking for them to bring value-wise to show a different value?
Sure. A lot of the same type of information we discussed with the disaster exemption. Pictures are great. Pictures are, most appraisal districts, I know ours very rarely go inside a property. We don't go inside a residence for sure, sometimes on businesses. But there's a lot of things with the interior of the property that we're making assumptions on that we have no idea. We're basing our value opinions on the exterior. So if you have pictures of the interior, specifically of damage, you want to make sure and bring that in. We also do not always have all the sales out there. We base our values as best as possible off of comparable sales, but sometimes we may miss that. You may know of a neighbor that sold their property that we didn't have that information on. So if you've got a good comparable, and that's a property that's similar to yours, that has sold, that's good evidence as well. Any damages that you had, and with a business, an important thing is if you're leasing a property, income and expense. Sometimes that is a good basis for valuation. Is what is that value netting on a return of on an investment, and we can kind of abstract that into a valuation. So that's good evidence as well. Really, anything that affects your value is good evidence. We're just looking for something to corroborate your opinion on that.
And that's an interesting point you brought up a second ago, because I know in our business, a lot of times we have what they call the MLS system, people may be familiar with, where we put listed properties and sold properties, and that's where most realtors go to make our determination about what a market value of your home could be. And you said that y'all's evidence that you get for sales of the property, do y'all coordinate, do y'all get some of the information from our MLS systems or just from the county filings? How do y'all determine if you know if a property is sold or not?
Sure. Excuse me. So we get actually if a property has changed deeds from the county. So if there has been a transaction occur, we'll get a record of that from the county clerk's office typically. The problem with it is matching it up with the sales information. We live in a wonderful state that is where you don't have to disclose your sales price if you don't want to, and if you do disclose it to us, we have to keep it confidential. But that makes our job fairly difficult. So we rely primarily on sales surveys. We do get some MLS information. We get information anywhere we can get it, but a lot of ours is voluntarily disclosed. So. On residences, we'll probably have in the realm of maybe 60 to 70% of sales that occur. On land and business properties, that may drop to 10 to 20%. So that's pretty thin on data a lot of times, so we depend on property owners during the protest time to bring us information that many times refutes what we have on there because we don't have the information. So protest time is a great time for us to gather more information to help adjust our values down where they should be.
And then tell us a little bit about exemptions that people may qualify for. Homestead, over 65, ag exemptions. Are there deadlines for filing that, or is there paperwork they need to bring in, forms they need to fill out? How do they go about figuring out what exemptions they qualify for and applying for those?
Sure. There's probably too many exemptions to go over all in this one setting, but we can go over to hit the high points on the ones that are most common. The most common is going to be the residence homestead exemption. You have to own a property as of January 1st. It has to be your principal place of residence as of January 1st. If you meet those two criteria and do not have another homestead somewhere else, it's kind of automatic. One of the things you want to make sure of is you will have to have a driver's license or a state ID, so that's some of the supporting documentation, and you will have to file an application on that. Your driver's license should match the address that you're applying for. That is one of the checks that we use to make sure that is your principal place of residence. And again, if you don't have a driver's license, state ID will work. If you're over the age of 65, we're also going to use that driver's license to corroborate that you are and support that you are actually over the age of 65. So we use that to determine that. In some cases, if you were disabled, you will get some additional benefits similar to a person over the age of 65, and you'll have to have some evidence to support that. Typically, that's from either Social Security office or from a doctor. If you're a disabled veteran, you get some additional benefits in that, and you'll get some documentation from the VA that you can provide to support that as well. But the main thing is you'll need to file an application on that, and for most folks to get that general residence homestead exemption, you'll need a driver's license or state ID. They'll need to be submitted at the same time. The deadline for applying that is April 30th of the year of application. So if you're going to apply for the 2021 year, you want to get that in by April 30th. However, this is one of the exemptions that's very lenient. They give you quite a long time to file that late. So if you're interested in filing that after April 30th, contact your appraisal district, and you very well may qualify for that even if you missed maybe the prior year. Another common one we hear of is ag exemption. We call it an ag exemption, but technically it's termed 1D1 open space special appraisal.
Ag exemption sounds simpler.
Ag exemption is much less of a mouthful, and you'll hear us call it that as well, ag exemption. The deadline for it is the same. You'll need to apply for it by April 30th of the year of which you're making the application. They're not as lenient on it on filing late. You have up until the appraisal roll is certified, which typically happens on or before July 25th. But if you apply for that between April 30th and July 25th, you're going to get a late penalty of 10%. Does not apply. You don't get a late penalty with the general homestead, but you will in the ag. After that certification happens, there's really no provision for filing that late. So you want to make sure and get that in timely. The ag exemption is probably one of the things we get most questions about. You do have to have a history of agricultural use on your land for 5 out of the prior 7 years. You have to be actively using your property for an agricultural purpose to the degree of intensity that is supported in that county. So what that means is each county, it's going to be different for out in West Texas than it is for here in Northeast Texas. So each county is going to have some different requirements on that, but you want to talk with your local county on what those specific intensity requirements are. But the bottom line is you can't be token ag use. It has to be a common or generally accepted in that area ag operation.
So what are some of the general uses that people use that they could file for an ag exemption?
Sure. Probably the two most common in our area are cattle production and hay production. Those are the most common that we see. But we see folks producing sheep, goats. A new one that's gaining popularity is for bees. So beekeeping is an approved use. Now it has one caveat: it has to be between 5 acres and 20 acres, a 5 acre minimum and 20 acre maximum. And that's statewide. That's part of the law. The other ag uses don't have as strict of a limitation on that.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I know beekeeping is one thing we talk about quite a bit, and it goes into lots of different categories, because it's not just the bees themselves and the honey they produce, but with the agricultural and the reproduction of lots of the plants that you may be growing, farmers and things out there as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, any other tips on getting these papers filed, or things you see upcoming in the tax market? Where do you see a lot of the tax values going? Like around Canton, we see a lot of build up there on the I-20 corridor. What's happening with that?
Sure. Land is a real hot commodity. I don't have to tell you guys that right now. Development is hot. Residential properties are moving very quickly. We've got more demand than we have supply in a lot of cases. So property values are moving up. Unfortunately, when you're talking to a tax guy, that's not a good thing. When you're talking to your realtor, that is a good thing in a lot of cases. But we are seeing heavy drive in the residential market right now, as well as land. People are wanting to get out of the big city and move out here to the country and for a quieter type of life, and so that's driving our prices up and making for less supply out of the market. So
it's important then to get those exemptions in right now. Every penny's going to count.
Absolutely, because market value drives your tax, or well, actually drives your appraisal, which is the basis for your taxes. It's important to take advantage of every exemption you can. Also, stay on top of those what your appraised value is. We want to be as accurate as possible, but we don't want you getting appraised for $1 more than you should be appraised for, and keep those tax dollars in check. So make sure and stay on top of all that. One last thing I'd like to add is I know we've gone through a very tough year with COVID. One good byproduct of that is we've moved a lot of things online. So the homestead exemptions, the ag exemptions, your protest forms, you can apply in most cases with most counties online now. So look to the county websites. We have that on our website. Most counties will, where you can take advantage of that online now and not have to get off your couch to come in. Nobody wants to go to the tax office. So so save yourself a trip, save yourself some gas, and get that done online. And don't hesitate to call or email us if need be as well.
And that's great. And like you mentioned, each county takes care of their own taxes. But if they happen to reside in Van Zandt County, do you want to give the website or phone number out that they could contact your office there?
Sure. So our phone number is 903-567-6171, and our website is www.vzcad.org. And we also have a Facebook page out there, so we put a lot of these things to try to remind you and help you out there, so you might check that out as well. But yeah, check our website out, give us a call, email us. We're happy to help you any way we can.
Man, we appreciate you being here. And I tell you what, we've got a list of other questions we'd like to get to. Maybe we can have you back again to answer some of them other ones. I know that this was the most pressing issue this week, to make sure people can get this form filed from our recent storm that we've had, and that most people did not know about that.
Sure.
And one more time, the name of that form, or at least the letters and number on that.
Sure. It's going to be the application for temporary exemption for qualified property damaged by disaster, and the form number is 50-312. And again, you'll find that on the comptroller's website. You can find it probably on your appraisal district's website. And if you need to, call your local appraisal office. Ask them. You can pick that up typically by their office, or you call our office. We're going to mail it to you if you need us to. So.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we appreciate having you in. Look forward to having you on again sometime soon. Finish up more questions.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, anytime you want to come on with them, you're more than welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, and we're going to be back next week.
Yeah.
Next week, and in the meantime, if you didn't get all the information here, it's going to be on our Facebook pages for replay, or you can give our office a call at 903-887-7055, or you can give Brett a call. What's your number, Brett?
It's 903-340-6301.
Or I'm Shy at 903-340-6159. Give us a call. We'll get you in touch with the appraisal district and get you all the forms you need.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. We'll see y'all next week, and Stone next week, right?
That's the plan as of now.
Okay. Well, we'll see y'all next week. Thank y'all, and we'll be back with more buying, selling, and trading right after this.